Hi, welcome. Today we're going to be making some chicken parmesan. Here's a list of the tools you'll need. And now for the prep work. First, we're going to start off with some zucchini. We have 2 zucchinis here. Take off the ends and then cut them down the middle. And now cut them into slices. Make sure to put them in a bowl when you're done. Now here we have a portobello mushroom. We're just going to cut it in half and then into slices. We want the slices to be about the same size as the zucchini slices. Now here we have a white onion. Cut it in half and then dice it into smaller pieces. Set aside in a separate bowl. Now here we have another portobello mushroom. We're going to want to do this with 2 portobello mushrooms. Cut them into strips and then cut them down into smaller cubes. I forgot to show it here, but I also diced up 6 to 8 sun-dried tomato halves. You can find those in a jar in your local grocery store. And now we have 4 to 5 garlics, which we smashed and then minced. And now for the tomato sauce. Now, in a medium saucepan, bring it up to a medium heat, add a little bit of olive oil, and add in your diced onions. I sprinkled a little bit of salt on top of the onions. Now that the onions are starting to sweat, make sure to continually stir until they start to get golden brown. If you're using stainless steel, you can add a little bit more olive oil to prevent the onion from sticking to the pan. Once the onion has gotten golden brown, you're going to want to add in your minced garlic. Now, after about a minute, you're going to want to add the diced mushrooms and the sun-dried tomatoes. And stir. I also added some black pepper and red chili flakes. Keep stirring. The mushrooms are going to release a bit of liquid, just keep reducing it. Make sure to keep it at a medium heat. You don't want the fond at the bottom of the pan to burn. To deglaze the pan, we're going to want to add about a cup of red wine and about 2 to 3 cups of chicken stock. And stir everything together. Now we added our can of San Marzano tomatoes. Make sure to scrape the bottom of the pan to remove all that delicious fond. I prefer using whole tomatoes. I just break them down with my spatula. I prefer a slightly thicker sauce. But if you prefer, it's perfectly fine to just use tomato sauce as well. Now, if you want a perfectly smooth sauce, you can decide to blend everything together. But personally, I like to have the little pieces of mushroom and sun-dried tomatoes still visible. I feel that it adds a bit more texture to my sauce. Now we're going to want to put this in the back burner. Keep it simmering while we prepare the rest of the meal. And now onto the chicken. I'm seasoning the flour with some salt, some black pepper, and some cayenne powder. You can substitute cayenne powder for paprika if you prefer. I also added some cayenne powder to my breadcrumbs, as well as some grated Parmesan cheese. Make sure it's evenly combined. I also added some onion powder to my flour. So I have chicken breast here from my local grocery store. I'm just removing the skin and excess fat from each chicken breast. Once the chicken breasts are cleaned up, we're going to want to butterfly them. Butterflying is the process of cutting the chicken breast down the long way in order to open it up from the middle, as you see here. Make sure to not cut all the way through the chicken. We want to give it a butterfly shape. Repeat that process with the rest of the pieces. Depending on the size of the chicken breast, you might feel that it's a bit too thick. Or, if you prefer a thinner piece, you can cover it with some saran wrap and flatten it down with either a heavy pan, a meat mallet, or a rolling pin. Now after that, we're going to want to cover the entire piece of chicken in the flour. Make sure to not miss any spots whatsoever. Shake off any excess flour and then dredge in the egg, also making sure to cover the entire piece of chicken. Once that's done, move it onto the breadcrumbs, and as before, make sure to cover every single corner of that piece of chicken. Once you've done that, you can lightly shake off the excess. Repeat that process with the remaining pieces. Set aside onto a baking sheet. And now for frying. Now here I'm using peanut oil to fry. You can also use vegetable oil, but don't use olive oil. Here I have a baking sheet with a drying rack on top of it. This is going to help remove any excess oil after I'm done frying the piece of chicken. Once the oil has reached a temperature at about 375 degrees Fahrenheit, slowly lower the piece of chicken into the oil facing away from you. You know the oil's hot enough when you start to see bubbling as you put the piece of chicken in. If you don't see the bubbling, the oil is still not hot enough. It's going to take about 4 to 5 minutes on each side to get this nice golden color. Repeat this process with the remaining pieces. The chicken's going to take a couple minutes to fry. During this time is when you would ideally be making the zucchini and getting a pot of water to boil. In this case, we're just going to be using box pasta. Once your water is to a boil, add a generous amount of salt and cook the pasta according to the box's instructions. Don't forget to reserve a cup of the water with the pasta cooked in after you finish cooking the pasta. And now for the veggies. In another pan, bring up to a medium-high heat and add a drizzle of olive oil. Now add your sliced zucchinis. Stir for about a minute and then add the sliced mushrooms. Now I added some sea salt and some cayenne pepper. If you're not a fan of it being too spicy, you can substitute for paprika instead. Here I'm using the same saucepan for convenience sake. I would highly recommend using a flatter pan. It'll allow all the moisture to reduce much quicker. Remember to keep stirring. I added a little bit more olive oil to prevent it from sticking, mainly because I'm using a stainless steel pan. If you're using a non-stick pan, this shouldn't be an issue. Here I'm just using a countertop oven, so I can only fit 2 pieces at once. If you're using a full-sized oven, you can easily fit all the pieces at once. Once you finish frying the desired amount of pieces that you want to make, put them onto a baking sheet. And now the tomato sauce that's been simmering and reducing this entire time, you're going to want to cover each chicken breast with that sauce generously. Here I added grated mozzarella and Parmesan. It ended up in a crispier crust, but it wasn't as stringy as I wanted. I tried it again later, and if you want a stringier, stretchy cheese, I recommend using just mozzarella. If you get that ball of mozzarella, just cut nice slices and put it directly on top of the chicken. Place the pieces of chicken into the oven to broil for 5 to 10 minutes until the cheese is nice and melty and the internal temperature is 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius. Once the pasta is cooked, in a medium pan at medium heat, I added about 2 tablespoons of basil paste. Add a drizzle of olive oil and a medium square of butter. I really like using this basil paste because it makes it so much easier and it lasts longer than using fresh basil. Cook it with the butter until it's fragrant. After that, add the cooked pasta and combine. Also add about 1 or 2 spoonfuls of the sauce you made. If you feel it a little bit too thick, you can add a small amount of the pasta water that we saved earlier, just to loosen everything up. And that's it, you're pretty much done. Now, on to plating. I added a couple spoonfuls more of the sauce on top of the pasta. I also sprinkled a little bit of fresh parsley at the end. You can also grate some fresh Parmesan cheese on top of the pasta if you want. Well, that's pretty much it. Super simple and delicious chicken Parmesan, with a side of pasta and some mushroom and zucchini. Thank you very much for watching. If there's anything else that you want to see me make, leave your suggestions in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Happy cooking!